When I'm cooking a meal with mushrooms, my favorite mushroom to saute is shiitake. They have that wonderful, rich, earthy flavor. Did you know there's a way to grow your own shiitake mushrooms in your backyard? Agent Kelvin Gardner is here to tell us how. And Kelvin, we're going to do this on a log.
Yeah, we're going to grow mushrooms on a log. Now, yeah, it can be very intimidating. Mushroom growing is a very not too crazy talked about subject these days, but we're going to dive into it and kind of look at how it works and then how people can do it in their own backyards if they like to try it.
I am game for this. We've got a power tool, we've got a log. Where do we start?
Yeah, so it does take a little bit of tools. It takes a power drill and some wax and some mushroom spores that we can get from online from a multitude of different sources here. And these today, what we're going to be using is called plug spawn, which is just all it is they basically took some oats and they put some mushroom spores in it and they grew the mushroom through all of that. They grew the mycelium, which is the organism that grows the mushrooms. So they grew through that, and you can see some of the white stuff inside of these dowels here. And then
Can we open these up? I just want to see, because a mushroom on a dowel is fascinating to me.
Yeah, so
so there you go.
Here's that.
So the mushrooms on these little pieces of wood.
Yes, and so we use the terminology mushroom in a lot of ways to describe the whole organism. So it's looking at a mushroom is very similar to looking at an orange on a tree. It's like seeing the fruit of a much bigger organism. So if you ever saw a mushroom in a field and you kicked it over, it's not like you're particularly hurting the organism beneath it. You've just kind of moved whatever fruit it was using to reproduce.
Okay, and I want to, I assume you're going to show us this next, because I was fascinated by this. Tell us about it.
So this right here is a good example of what, this here is the mycelium of a mushroom growing underneath what it would look like underneath the ground. So all of this white stuff here is can be likened to what a root system is for a mushroom, even though mushrooms don't particularly have roots. They grow this kind of unicellular thread that exhibits different types of enzymes to break down the food that they want. So think of it as like an open stomach for the mushroom. It's using it to break down the food that it wants. And then once it reaches its maximum capacity in a space, just like if it filled out this whole jar, then it would create a mushroom at the top to be able to continue to reproduce and move to new areas.
Wow, this is fascinating. I had no idea when I see the mushroom I buy in the grocery store that this was what was once underneath in the ground. That is so cool. All right, let's talk about how to do it at home.
So just like this is a certain type of mushroom, and so knowing the type of mushroom that's growing is really important because in terms of shiitake, they have a very specific type of food they like, and they have very specific kinds of environments. Now, this isn't to scare anybody or to make it more intimidating. All it is that they really like to eat oak logs. So we have oaks everywhere. They're not very specific about the kind of oak, but we have so much live oak here, and typically during hurricane season, I can find an arborist who wants to cut down trees, and I'll just ask them if I can maybe buy a log off of them that's been freshly cut within the past 6 weeks. And so I'll get the log, and I'll soak the log to make sure that it stays wet, and then all I'll do is I'll make sure that the log is the right diameter. So you want to make sure that the log is about 4 to 8 inches in size.
Okay.
And then I like to make sure that it's about 1.5 feet to 3 feet long. You can make it as long as you want to, but it really takes more time to colonize through. Okay. And then the next part is to actually put the mushroom inside of the log.
Okay, so, show us how we do this.
So we picked the log. It's freshly cut, meaning that there's not a whole lot of stuff trying to jump in on it. The tree's immune system's still kind of fading out. So we've given it a sterile environment. So it's very similar almost to getting a shot from the doctor. We want to put in the mushroom, and then we want to seal it off with a Band-Aid so that nothing else gets in and there's no other kind of infection with another type of mushroom.
All right, so we're going to drill our log.
Yeah, so we use a sterilized drill bit. You can put it in some alcohol or something like that to make sure that's sterile. And then we just come in here and we drill a hole. It's only got to be about the same length as this dowel here. So this dowel
with our mushroom,
about that depth. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and pull this back out.
Okay.
And then we just go ahead and take the log. We stick that little dowel straight
so
into
that
the
went
hole
right
there.
in there.
Went straight in there. It doesn't particularly matter the depth as much as long as it's in there. And then I go ahead and just take a little bit of wax. I've microwaved just some organic soy wax. People can use beeswax, but soy and beeswax are typically what's used. And then I just tap a little bit over the hole and make sure that it kind of fills it and it begins to dry. And then that will initially dry. And then you can kind of see on this log has already been inoculated. So what it means is to give the mushroom a better chance, we want to drill multiple holes into the log to basically seed it with as much mushroom as possible. So I would
You've
do
already
about,
got some here.
yeah, I
we
split
can
them
see,
every
sealed with
4 to
wax.
6 inches here.
Okay.
And I would just drill my holes, put them in there, do wax, then kind of turn it to the next point. And I kind of rotate around the log going about 4 inches in between all the holes.
And at some point, we are going to see mushrooms growing out of these holes.
Yeah, so then that's kind of where the magic happens. So the general rule of thumb is that about every inch of the diameter of the log, that's how many months it should take for the mycelium to grow through in typical growing conditions. So once to stay wet, I would go maybe put it in my yard underneath a tree and keep it wet. And then over the next, in this case, about 6 months for this log, it would be going through the process of this. The mushrooms would kind of be growing through there, mycelium would be growing through there and eating up this space.
Yes.
And then it would kind of fill to capacity. And then think of this log as a battery. So it's going to use the energy from this log to make the mushrooms. And the general rule of thumb for how long these last is it should be roughly a year for every inch in diameter as well. So it should take about 6 months to grow, and it should be about, I would say, anywhere between 4 to 6 years of this actually fruiting out in the right conditions.
This is incredible. What a fun project this would be to do at home. Calvin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Glad you were here. And who knew that when you buy a mushroom, this is what actually is going on underneath in the ground. Such a fun project to try. I hope you try it at home.